Hey, what's up, Silas here? It's October 2nd. This is going to be a reading of something I found online. Some of you have been paying attention to what's been going on in the United States of America with the confirmation hearing and process of Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So during this process, there's a lot of Democrats at the break, from the break, just weeks after, they just like, no, anything happens with Trump, we have to fight it. We have to block this. We're not going to let this go through. And then some accusations came out about something that happened to Judge Kavanaugh when he was in high school. Someone came out, I think her name was Christine Blasey Ford, or Kimberly Blasey Ford. Let me double check the name of this individual that came out with the accusations, and said that Ford, who's Ford is the lady who accused Kavanaugh, Christine Blasey Ford, of having got into a situation where they went to a party during the summer. Had been drinking. He said he was drinking. Him and some other guy. One of them pushed her into a room, started sexually assaulting her, started kissing her and things like that. Pushed her onto a bed, and apparently, she says, Brett Kavanaugh, when he was 15 or 16, however old he was back then, put his hand over her mouth as she was trying to scream and get some help, like trying to fight back, trying to stop. And at that point, he started groping her. Then she managed to get out from under him, run out of the room, into the bathroom, across the hall, and then eventually Kavanaugh and this other man, I think he was the boy at the time, something Judge, ended up. His name Judge, or I might think of Judge because of him being a judge now. I'm forgetting the actual name of that might be in this article. But I was watching this whole process, and I've been thinking about how the accusation. Some people just see the accusation and they say that's guilt. A lot of things that can really bother me in this whole testimony is, first of all, how people approach this, how people accept what's been done, what's been said, the partisanship on both sides, how even some people on the right are like, no, she's lying 100%, I'm not going to believe anything she says. I understand the presumption of innocence, but I thought I understood the presumption of innocence, and I thought other people would understand it. Because if I understand it as it is, it's just a simple thing. If I accuse you of something, it's up to me to prove that you did that thing. And we've seen not too long ago, there were situations where there was actual lynchings. I've talked about actual lynchings still occurring here in Kenya, where I am right now, in Kenya, where you have situations where when I got back to the country when I was a kid, I remember going to the newspapers and seeing actual pictures of people that had been lynched. Somebody steals something or somebody's accused of stealing something, then it gets a situation where a mob actually comes up, they get this person, they beat them up, they kill them, or they put a tie around their neck and burn them. The whole tie around the neck thing, this is another thing that's not known. I'm sure other people were doing it before, but it was popularized by Winnie Mandela, who was the wife of Nelson Mandela during the strife and problems that were occurring in South Africa. And then just speaking about South Africa, I just recently saw something, saw this news article about somebody who was caught in a bathroom apparently raping a 6-year-old, and he was just beaten up. Now in this video you see him covered in blood, he's naked, sitting there at a tab at the bar, and he's talking about how like people are like, is this his blood? Is that other blood? Like what's going on in the situation? So it's still an unfolding situation. But that whole treatment, I personally think if somebody has been actually caught guilty of raping somebody, it gets to the point where I wouldn't mind chemical castration, and probably worse. Because you've got to the point where you have admitted you do not really respect somebody's reproductive process. Because when you do that, you violate that whole reproductive process. Sex in general was developed in order to reproduce. Somebody has their own bodily autonomy, and that's one of the worst violations I think you could possibly make, is violating that in that way. And I think the people who are actually caught guilty of planning and doing these things, they should be up to that kind of punishment where it's chemical castration and other things. But somebody like an actual lynch mob goes out there and hurts somebody who's been caught in the act of doing this thing, I don't really consider it that negative of a thing. Even I'm all for the non-aggression principle, but this person has violated the non-aggression principle by doing that. And there's a lot that goes into this. And I think people know this. People know this intuitively. That's why they use it. That's why these accusations are so effective. Because they do know when you make this accusation, it actually carries enough weight that people are actually going to understand that and be like, no, this is a horrible, horrible thing. And we have to act on it. That's why businesses, if somebody's just accused, a lot of businesses will decide to just fire this person. Let's just cut off ties with this person automatically before even actually going through the investigation. Because just the insinuation that you may have done this is enough to ruin somebody's livelihood. And still at that point, I do understand loss of livelihood is not as bad as loss of life. At least I can argue that right now, but I've mentioned this before, where I think males in general who are more likely to receive this accusations, these false accusations, and they also are more likely in general to actually assault in this manner, they are more tied to their occupation, tied to what they do, who they are, is more defined in what they do. That's why you see a very high suicide rate post-divorce for males over for females, because females then can rebound in other things, and they find their value, I think, more in themselves than men do, whose more their value is more defined about what they can do for society. Now, these are just some generalizations there. Of course, it's not every single male. You can show me exceptions and things like that. But this is just kind of an opening to this. Well, anyway, for this court case, this hearing that occurred, there was a lot of things. I'm not going to go too deeply into the hearing. I'm mostly just going to read what was written here because there was this woman was hired and she was the one speaking. And I remember hearing some things before it was coming up about someone being hired for this and this. I thought it was maybe one rising role. But there was somebody, Miss Rachel Mitchell, I don't know if it's Miss or Mrs. She was interviewed. She was the one giving the questions to Christine Blasey Ford throughout the entire process because they would have the Democratic senators and people on this committee, on this panel, asking questions, and some of the questions were like, first of all, you're so brave. You're respecting, you're so inspirational, you say this. You see, when they talk about that already, when they say you're so inspirational for victims, that is already embedding in your mind that she is a victim. Because if I'm watching, let's say I play American football and I see somebody else who is maybe a cricket player or something, and then someone comes up to me and says, "You are so inspirational for cricket players by what you've done," and I went, "No, that's a horrible. Roll that back. That's not the kind of not a good analogy. Let me think of a better one. No, just in general, if you already say you are inspirational for victims, when you say if you ask her questions, you're a victim blaming. I'll get back to this soon. You're already embedding in somebody's mind that that person is a victim. So if somebody is a victim, who was he victimized by? If Blasey Ford, is it Blasey Ford? Blasey Ford. Blasey Ford? Blasey Ford. Is a victim, then who victimized her? You're already putting that in your mind. So you have to be a victim first, correct? Before you can be inspirational to actual victims. So you're already couching it in that way, and that's a very insidious thing that a lot of people do. I think it's more on the political left. They use this glamour. This guy, TFM, Turd Flinging Monkey, is this YouTuber, and he talks about how people on the left, specifically talking about feminists and things like this, he's talking about women in general. Anyway, he talks about how they use words as magic spells. So they try to achieve different things, they try to achieve certain results. But anyway, so what's been on the screen right now is what Rachel Mitchell, who is a veteran sex crime prosecutor, she was hired by the Republican members of the Senate Judicial Committee to ask questions. So I'm sure she advised them, but she was also kind of getting questions from the members and asking. And I think it was part of the optics in the situation where the Republicans knew that, hey, if we have our panel going out here and asking these questions, then the left or people in the media or other people just jump on and be like, look at these angry white males with their male privilege questioning this poor victim blaming her, horrible, 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 in defense of Mr. Kavanaugh, all this white privilege coming together. They knew that was going to happen. But I saw at least one person be like, oh, whatever. By you hiring Rachel Mitchell, who, again, a veteran sex crime prosecutor, by them hiring her, instead the person is like, the Republicans didn't even care enough to actually talk to her, to even ask her questions directly. Look, people are onto you. People are onto these people on the left. People understand that some of them think in this way, where it's like if you question somebody who has come up with an accusation, that counts as harassment to that person. And for a long time, the blurring between what is harassment and what is assault has already occurred. So when you add the whole gender dynamic here, where it's like an old white male who's like the hated group completely in the world, all evil comes from these people in this belief system of the left or this regressive belief system, that's where it comes from. And then you add that gender dynamic where they're asking questions of a female who has come up with an accusation, then that's sexual assault automatically. And now they've gone to sexual assault where they're like, okay, walking on the street, catcalling is considered harassment, considered assault. And then they just blur the line between what's assault and rape. It's getting to the point where you might be accused of rape just for having certain words and conversations with somebody. That is not that far from what's actually going on there. It's getting that close. And that's a very worrying thing. So anyway, she wrote this article, she released this report, and I think it's just pretty cool that these things are actually accessible to people in the world, where you can just get this information and you can talk about it. And that's what I say. We need more information. Just recently, Keith Ellison, who is, I think, the deputy chair of the Democratic National Convention, the Democratic National Congress, which is the leading structural party of the Democratic Party in the United States of America, he was accused for actually physically assaulting one of his ex-girlfriends or partners or something, and the partner said there was a 911 call. She didn't release it. She said it was too sensitive for her to release it. I think if you have a 911 call, please release it. If it's actual evidence out there, I know it's tough. I mean, I don't know it's tough. I've never been victimized in the way that she said she'd been victimized, but I do understand there are some challenges in there. But if there is evidence and you mention there's evidence and then you mention there's evidence and say you can't release that evidence, it gets to a tough situation for your believability. So if you actually do have evidence, release it. I just saw another article about someone like Cristiano Ronaldo, who's one of the most famous football players, soccer players in the world. Right now he's playing for Juventus, Juve in Torino, in Liga. Is it Liga A? Anyway, it's an Italian league. But he's playing out there. He was accused of having sexually raped somebody in Las Vegas 9 years ago. Is it 9? Yeah, 9 years ago. He was 23 or something, 23 or 22 or 24. Around there. He's 33 now. And the woman is now coming out with some accusations that it happened. Apparently, there was a court case. She says she went to the Las Vegas police station and actually filed reports. The pictures were taken. There was a settlement outside of court for about 220 something thousand euro. That's, I think, something like around maybe $275,000, I think, for the conversion rate and things like that. But this is another thing. I know most court cases go to settlement outside of, they don't actually see the court, and that you get in front of the judge and the jury and things like that. But this is another thing. If you are in any sort of court case and you settle with the acceptance that you're not going to talk about it after, and then you get the situation where later on you come out and you break that non-disclosure agreement, that sucks. And I know when you're in the actual situation, if you actually have been insulted, you've actually been victimized in that situation, you could be thinking in a different way at that time. You're not ready to go out and talk. But that's an unfortunate thing, and I do wish there is a better environment for people to feel they have the safety and the ability to actually come out and talk about these things when they happen. Whenever you have these long breaks between things, whenever you have these things, you accepted money and things like this, it clouds the waters, it raises doubt where I don't think there should be doubt. Because I think these things are bad enough that if they do happen, we need to punish them to the highest extent that we possibly can. But at that point, since the level of punishment is so high, we also need to have a higher bar of proof. And the standard of proof is already so low in this situation, since this is normally a X said, Y said situation. Because let's not try and pretend that this is strictly a gendered issue. You have situations where females also assault males. I've seen this meme going around talking about, boys will be boys. And it's boys is scratched out and written, boys will be held accountable. And I'm saying, wait, what are you talking about? Have you personally heard anyone out there personally heard somebody say, boys will be boys, after there's been a proven case of a male sexually assaulting a female. I personally have never heard this. I haven't even heard this in jest in like locker room talk type of things, situations. No. One thing I have heard is situations where an older female in a statutory rape situation, having a sexual intercourse with a sexual relationship with an actual boy in that situation, age-wise, underage, getting in the situation where somebody's like, oh man, if I was a boy, if I had a teacher like that, that'd be awesome. That's a boys will be boys kind of situation. Where, oh, they talk, oh, I can't believe he went and told his friends and he told them he snitched on this person. Of course, this normally depends with the attractiveness of the female in question in this situation. But I've never seen it in the inverse. I've definitely never seen it in the inverse of a male teacher assaulting a younger female. I've never seen it in the inverse, in the situation of being talked about where it's like, let's say, for example, a male priest is assaulting a boy, an altar boy or something, and then they go and say, oh, if I was a boy, I'd be okay with that. Like, I was sexually active. I was sexually turned on. One situation I may see that may be close to this was Milo Yiannopoulos, who talked about his own personal assault situation. And he was saying, I was actually part and parcel. I was a participant in this whole process. It wasn't just necessarily adults grooming me, but he was like, I was actually part of this. And he was treated, that was received in a really negative way by general society. Yet, you look at the comment sections of some of these articles talking about female teachers going to this point, and you see how it's treated. You see how people just go out, and it's disgusting to me. I think change indeed happened. I do know there's difference between males and females and things like that, but that whole double standard to me is very disgusting. But anyway, I don't think the opening was going to be this long. I'm going to try to do the same way when I normally read these things. I try to read at least a paragraph and then give my opinions if I have anything to say about that paragraph at that point. So I'll just start with this. So this is a memorandum to all Republican senators from Rachel Mitchell, Nominations Investigative Council, United States Senate Committee on the Judiciary, September 30th, 2018. RE analysis of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's allegations. Again, these are allegations. They are still allegations. And what I was talking about with Senator Ellison before was that the Democrats have come out and said that he is innocent because no evidence has come forth. And now this is the thing. There's a 1 week period. We're currently in the 1 week where the FBI is supposed to investigate what's happening with Christine Blasey Ford's allegations, and then after that, the nomination process might continue to go forward. But then, okay, the FBI has been found to be partisan in different situations. What are they going to find in a week about something that's occurred 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago? What are they going to find out about that? Talking about that Vegas situation with the whole Cristiano Ronaldo thing. There's no statute of limitations on sexual assault in Vegas, so that investigation can still be opened up. But another thing that happened in Vegas was that shooting of like the biggest, at the time, it was the biggest shooting that's ever occurred in the United States, in the United States, where somebody apparently a couple of windows up, a couple of floors up in a hotel, shot down at the concert. And how much has come out on that? So it's just strange how like, people are like, yeah, we trust the FBI to find out this information, yet that's the story of the passion. But I digress. So, still allegations. No evidence was brought forward for Ellison, so they're saying he's innocent. Yet right now, people are already doing that victimizer type of, victim assaulter type of, what's it called? Type of language dealing with this kind of situation. So anyway, hypocrisy abounds in this situation. So yes, analysis of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's allegations. So please permit me this opportunity to present my independent assessment of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's allegations against Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Before I do this, I want to emphasize two important points. One, this memorandum contains my own independent assessment of Dr. Ford's allegations, based upon my independent review of the evidence and my nearly 25 years of experience as a career prosecutor of sex-related and other crimes in Arizona. This memorandum does not necessarily reflect the views of the chairman, any committee member, or any senator. No senator reviewed or approved this memorandum before its release, and I was not pressured in any way to write this memorandum or to write any words in this memorandum with which I do not fully agree. The words written in this memorandum are mine, and I fully stand by all of them. While I'm a registered Republican, I am not political or partisan person. Now, some things here. There's some optics going on in this entire testimony, in this entire hearing. There was a situation where Blasey Ford had all these people around her, talking to her, giving her advice, saying, say this, do this, do this, referring to counsel. And then people were showing these pictures of all these people around Blasey Ford, and then they show this other picture of Kavanaugh sitting there by himself and saying, look at the difference. And this is, you see, why I'm saying I see some of these things on the right as well as the left. And I'm like, look, he's a judge. He's very familiar with the legal system. Yes, I do believe it's a situation where if you really are just telling the truth, you may not need people to really tell you things. But with the legal system, what you say, how you say it, people can use that against you. So even with him, even if he's telling the entire truth, he knows how to tell it in that point. Even if he is emotional, even if he's in the situation where he's tense and things like that, he has years and years of practicing this. Now, Blasey Ford is also a psychologist, so she may have certain ways of understanding how to present herself in a certain way if she is lying. But she definitely, it makes more sense that she would need that legal counsel. Another thing I saw was this, oh man, this is really just... The same people who talk about how men need to be more emotional, need to be more in touch with emotions, are some of the very same people that were going at Judge Kavanaugh about him crying, about him getting in this situation. These are the same people that also understand that, oh, when a woman or somebody gets pulled over and like by a cop, you fall down in tears. Or if you go and question somebody who claims they've been assaulted and they break out into tears and somebody says, why can't you explain to me? They say, no, I'm emotional. I can't believe you're assaulting me in this situation. So these are the people who just cannot possibly imagine that Kavanaugh would be a victim of a false accusation. Because if he actually is a victim of a false accusation, then by their own reasoning, questioning him would be a sort of victim blaming. Like, how dare you ask somebody who's been victimized by a false accusation that he's actually, that to defend himself, to actually prove that, oh, he's actually didn't do this. Like, and a false accusation occurs because this is what their argument is, that if somebody comes out and says, I have been assaulted, and then you go out and ask them those questions, it's saying, we don't believe you. We don't believe what you said. That's when it comes down to it, and that's re-victimizing them. So if somebody has been accused of something, and you say, oh, I don't believe, prove to me why I should believe you didn't do this. That's also re-victimizing them, because a false accusation is a victimization. You're calling somebody's character, somebody's believability into question. Anyway, moving on. So a Senate confirmation hearing is not a trial, especially not a prosecution. The chairman made the following statement on September 25th, 2018, after he hired me. As I've said, I am committed to providing a forum for both Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh on Thursday that is safe, comfortable, and dignified. The majority members have followed the bipartisan recommendation to hire as staff counsel for the committee an experienced career sex crime prosecutor to question the witness at Thursday's hearing. The goal is to depoliticize the process and get to the truth, instead of grandstanding and giving senators an opportunity to launch their presidential campaigns. I am very appreciative that Rachel Mitchell has stepped forward to serve in this important and serious role. Miss Mitchell, has been recognized in the legal community for her experience and objectivity. I've worked to give Dr. Ford an opportunity to share serious allegations with committee members in any format she'd like after learning of the allegations. I promised Dr. Ford that I would do everything in my power to avoid a repeat of the circus atmosphere in the hearing room that we saw the week of September 4th. I've taken this additional step to have questions asked by expert staff and staff counsel to establish the most fair and respectful treatment of the witness possible. That is how I approach my job. There is no clear standard of proof for allegations made during the Senate's confirmation process. But with the world in which I work is the legal world, but the world in which I work is the legal world, not the political world. Thus, I can only provide my assessment of Dr. Ford's allegations in that context. in that legal context. So that right there, and this is. I mean, they're so predictable. People on the left. There's a whole presidential campaign things because there was a lot of grandstanding by the people on the Democratic side. There's a lot of videos you can watch. I'm sure there's snippets and things like that. Not just a question. Just see how like it seemed 25% of what they were saying was about how they feel versus actual questions. Even the substitutions are like, okay, are you actually going to get to the question? Are you just going to talk about how this makes you feel? And it sickens me, but this is political theater, and I think it's about time that people saw what was going on with this. As I've mentioned, I am very big into politics. I would rather more people be into politics and understand what's going to happen. Because it's like, okay, sports, I do understand things are connected in different ways. But if you're like, I don't really care what's going on in the sports world, it's not really so much that some athlete or some sports team that you don't care about is going to come and affect your life in some way. But if you don't care about the political system, it's still going to affect your life in very real ways. So you might as well actually know some basics of it. So the more exposure politics is having in the world, the better it is, in my opinion. Okay, so back to the reading. In the legal context, here's my bottom line. A he said, she said case is incredibly difficult to prove, but this case is even weaker than that. Dr. Ford identified other witnesses to the event, and those witnesses either refuted her allegations or failed to corroborate them. For the reasons discussed below, I do not think that a reasonable prosecutor would bring this case based on the evidence before the committee. Nor do I believe that this evidence is sufficient to satisfy the preponderance of the evidence standard. That's just a standard that protects everyone in a civilized society. Lynch mobs are a thing. Lynch mobs were a thing in the United States of America not that long ago. The outright lynch mob were black people, mostly black males, being falsely accused in some cases, of assaulting mostly white females that ended up with them swinging on the end of a rope. And as this song by Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit, it's a very eerie song. The lyrics of that, we could do a separate video on that involving something like Kanye West. Kanye West did a song based off of that, taking some off of that. But just thinking about the evil that occurred with that just not that long ago. And I don't think the Democrats are understanding how much support they're losing on this kind of situation. They just keep shooting themselves in the foot, punching themselves in the face. It's just like an addict who's just out of control with these missteps where they think they're doing the right thing. But anyway, I think, at least when it comes to the black community, I think a lot of people, specifically the black community in the United States of America, with this history of what's happened to that community, I think they're seeing some of these things. And you've seen the reaction. Candace Owens has posted things about this. I've been posting things about this. We're, of course, much smaller. Of course, I got a small YouTube channel with a few people following. But it's something that's been coming out where people are making those connections, where that is, in the United States of America, the most visceral kind of imagery that goes along with lynch mobs of this kind, especially in the sexual assault, false accusations type of situation. That's definitely something that's still very, very out there, and I don't think they understand how big of an effect that might have. I think it was black male support has already gone up to 35% for Trump, 35% at least positive view of Trump and the Republicans, and that's going to get higher. I think female support is still at 95% approvability for the Democrats. That may drop low. We'll see what will happen with that. But anyway, back to the reading. So Dr. Ford has not offered a consistent account of when the alleged assault happened. In a July 6 text to the Washington Post, she said it happened in the mid-1980s. In her July 30th letter to Senator Feinstein, she said it happened in the early 80s. Her August 7th statement to the polygrapher said that it happened one high school summer in the early 80s, but she crossed out the word early for reasons she did not explain. One thing on the side here, this polygraph test that people are talking about. First of all, polygraphs can be, you can learn how to beat them. I think they said, no, I'm not going to say this because there's some very famous criminal that they said that can pass the test. And also the polygraph, if you truly believe something happened, even though it didn't happen, like if you ask somebody who says God exists, like Allah is the greatest on high, you ask a Muslim and say, who is God? And you say Allah. who is God's messenger on earth? And he says Muhammad. He could pass a polygraph test. Does that mean those things are right? No. Excuse me. So, with a polygraph test, you believing something does not necessarily make it correct. That's one thing. Second of all, this polygraph test, apparently, it was done in a way where she broke down these things and things like that. Then she was asked, have you lied about anything in this thing that you wrote? And she said no. And there was one other question. And that is the polygraph test that she supposedly passed that's being touted as something that's really a big thing. I think there's a video of this actual polygraph test out there. So there's all this evidence out there, or all this material out there that can call her allegations into question. So people who have apparently made up their mind on this, to me, those are very dangerous people that physical removal might be imminent. Helicopter is optional. Hands over on that thing. But anyway, okay, so back to this. A September 16th Washington Post article reported that Dr. Ford said it happened in the summer of 1982. Similarly, why do I add the I there like it's so annoying? Similarly, the September 16th article reported that notes from an individual therapy session in 2013 show her describing the assault as occurring in her late teens. But she told the Post and the committee that she was 15 when the assault allegedly occurred. She has not turned over the therapy records for the committee to review. While this is common for victims to be uncertain about dates, Dr. Ford failed to explain how she was suddenly able to narrow the timeline to a particular season and a particular year. Because you're saying it was this party, it was Brett Kavanaugh. So to have that, you kind of have to know some of these things. Okay, back to the reading. Dr. Ford has struggled to identify Judge Kavanaugh as the assailant by name. No name was given in her 2012 marriage therapy notes. No name was given in her 2013 individual therapy notes. Dr. Ford's husband claims to recall that she identified Judge Kavanaugh by name in 2012. At that point, Judge Kavanaugh's name was widely reported in the press as a potential Supreme Court nominee if Governor Romney won the presidential election. In any event, it took Dr. Ford over 30 years to name her assailant. Delayed disclosure of abuse is common, so this is not dispositive. So that's what I'm saying. As I've mentioned before, just think about the simple thing. One thing that does happen a lot, I talk about this a lot and have a series, Hands Up, Don't Hit. I think you guys check it out. It's a series about child abuse, and I do know victims of abuse have problems actually facing up to it, what happened, and let alone sharing it with people. Just even admitting it to yourself is a thing. I had some adverse childhood experiences, and growing up, I would be that kind of messed up individual that would think, oh, like, the United States of America is going badly because people don't hit their kids. Little did I know it was mostly the people around me who lived in families who didn't hit their kids, because in the U.S., people still hit their kids a lot. But I would be like, yeah, I would make sure my kid knows why I'm hitting them before I hit them. But then I wasn't thinking that if you actually are able to explain to the kid why you're going to hit them, then you should be able to explain to the kid why the kid has done something wrong. And then if the kid can understand that, then why add the hitting to that situation? Now, if the kid can't understand what they did wrong, then why would you hold them that responsible and hit them? That's just a violation of non-aggression principle, but it's just so much that goes into that. So I do understand there are issues with you being abused and then not being able to actually talk about it. So when people are like, oh, the 35 years, I'm like, nah, that's not necessarily, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I would prefer if the environment was set up where people feel they can actually come out and talk about this as soon as it happens versus waiting this time. But hey, that's what we work with in the world that we live in right now. And I do think it is getting a lot better, not worse, despite what people might make it seem like. Okay, back to the reading. When speaking with her husband, Dr. Ford changed her description of the incident to become less specific. Dr. Ford testified that she told her husband about a sexual assault before they were married. But she told the Washington Post that she informed her husband that she was a victim of physical abuse at the beginning of their marriage. She testified that both times she was referring to the same incident. So again, this is a situation where people have struggles actually talking about these things. And I can imagine somebody getting into a relationship and having problems actually talking about that with the partner. And I've seen part of the reason I think relationships don't work as much. First of all, it's very new to have this level of choice in who you marry, in who you actually get as a partner. In the past, it's mostly selected by other people. People say, I want to have a princess marriage. I'm like, look, princesses never chose who they married in most cases. It was like, you're marrying this person because we need to seal these bonds between our countries or principalities or our areas we have kids with sort of bloodlines are fused. You're going to get to know this person out there. In many cases, they even speak the same language. They have like nothing in common. And that also trickled down. In fact, I think peasantry and people like that had more, I won't say choice, at least they had more in common with most of the people they married, because not really choice if you're living in a place where it's like 100 people, it's like 20 kids. Those kids are probably going to partner up. There might be like a village or so, like a cross where you actually go. But anyway, that kind of situation. So the amount of choice and things like that, the ability to have these interactions where you're sharing this with a partner, and then you get to a situation where somebody's like, I don't know what they're going to think of me if I say this. But I suggest that if you are considering getting in a relationship with somebody, be able to be as open and honest with what's happened to you in your past. Find somebody who makes you comfortable enough to share these really hard and serious things that could have happened to you, or somebody who feels comfortable enough with you to share those things with you, and I think that's the basis for a much stronger relationship. But anyway, so back to the reading. Dr. Ford has no memory of key details of the night in question, details that could help corroborate her account. She does not remember who invited her to the party or how she learned about it. She does not remember how she got to the party. She does not remember in what house the assault allegedly took place or where that house was located in any specificity. Perhaps most importantly, she does not remember how she got from the party back to her house. Here's some subpoints. Her inability to remember this detail raises significant questions. She told the Washington Post that the party took place near the Columbia Country Club. The club is more than 7 miles from her childhood home as the crow flies, and she testified that it was roughly a 20-minute drive from her childhood home. She also agreed for the first time in her testimony that she was driven somewhere that night, either to the party or from the party, or both. Dr. Ford was able to describe hiding in the bathroom, locking the door, and subsequently exiting the house. She also described wanting to make sure that she did not look like she had been attacked. But she has no memory of who drove her or when, nor has anyone come forward to identify him or herself as the driver. Given that this all took place before cell phones, arranging a ride home would not have been easy. Indeed, she stated that she ran out of the house after coming downstairs and did not state that she made a phone call from the house before she did, or that she called anyone else thereafter. There's some points to this. There's one more point here. She does not, however, remember small distinct details of the party. She does, however, remember small distinct details from the party unrelated to the assault. For example, she testified that she had exactly one beer at the party and was taking no medication at the time of the alleged assault. Now, a few things here. First of all, I think part of the reason the world is getting much better in this situation is, I know people are worried about some of the tracking that goes on, but just like a simple thing like here. If you are at a place, you have your cell phone, you have a computer, there's this really funny thing where it's like this, I might put it up on the screen like that. I'll probably put it in the post that I link this video to. But there was, there's this like teacher, Anyway, you'll see the meme. It's you'll never have a calculator. You won't be walking around with a calculator in your pocket all the time. So it's like a lying ass 90s teacher, because you just have this amazing supercomputer in your pockets now to live in future times. Well, you have something like ride sharing that tracks where you're going. Google Maps even has a feature where it's like you can have it track you constantly where you are in location. So yes, people can use this for. I mean, it's mostly used for advertising, for selling you things and things like that. It's profit overseas. But yes, they say the government can track you for these things. But also, you could be tracked in a situation like this. Like, if this situation had happened yesterday, or happened today, for most kids of this age, they would just be like, look, this is where my cell phone went. I was at this location. Judge Kavanaugh's cell phone was also at that location. That already adds so much more evidence for people to deal with. So I think that's a positive thing. There's a lot of positives of these, and I do understand we should focus on the negatives because the negatives are worth focusing on more than the positives. But remember, there's some of these positives out there for some of these things. Um, right here, they're talking about she was lying. She's saying exactly one beer and all these things. This could also just be partially a thing. I know the calendar came out with George Kavanaugh. His mom apparently kept this calendar from when he was a kid, and he was like, yes, he wasn't. He was scheduled to do something else on the weekend in question or during that summer. But you wouldn't be writing, "Oh, I'm going to go to this party with this other weekend." You wouldn't write that on a calendar that your mother is going to keep. I knew a few people whose parents were like, yeah, you can just drink at our house and things like that. If we went to drink anyway, we'd rather you do it at our house where we know what you're doing to kind of supervise the kind of situation. But that was a fraction of the people. Most people would not share with their parents how much they drank. First of all, it actually was illegal because these people are underage. And you have this situation where these communities in the Washington, D.C. area, a lot of politicians and things like that, a lot of people making laws and of the land and things like this, war on drugs, all these kind of things going on. Yet their kids are in their home, breaking the laws, doing these kind of things. So there's just many things kind of working in this kind of situation. It was really interesting for me to listen to this testimony and just hearing things on location with the kind of calling back experiences that I had. Posted something on social media and had a friend who like, those parties she was talking about, I remember them being parties like that. I also remember them being parties like that. If she was there and she was sloshing, she was wasted, the chances of her coming out and being like, yeah, doing keg stands and things like that, she wouldn't really like that. I think if she had one beer, and she actually did, some people would go out and just drink one or two beers. I know people right now who are, I mean, they're older at this time, that's what they do, so it's kind of easier to remember. She'd be like, yeah, my go-to thing was to go to a party and just have one beer. That could have been something that she kind of knew of. Could have been her first beer. So with that whole situation, and also this is not, I don't think it's illegal to lie in these kind of testimonies. And then people also have the ability to kind of go back in their mind and kind of set false memories and things like that. So yeah, anyway, so back to the reading. Dr. Ford's account of the alleged assault has not been corroborated by anyone she identified as having attended, including her lifelong friend. Dr. Ford has named 3 people other than Judge Kavanaugh who attended the party. Mark Judge, okay, was Judge, not just because Judge Kavanaugh. Some coincidence, I don't know. There's a lot of people, a few other people in public named Judge. Patrick P.J. Smith and her lifelong friend, Leland Kaiser. I don't know what that means. Maybe change of name. He was England back then. Kaiser could have changed. Leland a male or female name? I'm not quite sure. So Dr. Ford testified to the committee that another boy attended the party, but that she could not remember his name. No others have come forward. All 3 named eyewitnesses have submitted statements to the committee denying any memory of the party whatsoever. More relevantly, in her first statement to the committee, Miss Kaiser, so I guess it is a miss, stated through counsel that, simply put, Miss Kaiser does not know Mr. Kavanaugh, and she has no recollection of ever being at a party or gathering where he was present, with or without Dr. Ford. In a subsequent statement to the committee, though, through counsel, Miss Kaiser said that the simple and unchangeable truth is that she is unable to corroborate Dr. Ford's allegations because she has no recollection of the incident in question. Moreover, Dr. Ford testified that her friend, Leland, apparently the only girl at the party, did not follow up with Dr. Ford after the party to ask why she had suddenly disappeared. Now again, I'll play some devil's advocate here, or just to see like what could have happened in the situation. Let's say they were drunker than they thought. Let's say Leland was actually drinking a lot. She could have gotten a situation where she might have forgotten. I've been to some parties. I didn't go to too many parties in high school. Went to more in college. Started drinking after high school and things like that. But it was a situation where you could have been to so many parties you didn't forget. If you weren't assaulted at the party, maybe it wasn't that worth remembering. It would have just been a smaller thing. It's past and things like this. Or she could have been more drunk. She could have been hooking up with somebody. Maybe you don't want to snitch on your friend. There could be many reasons why this happened. But still, there is no evidence so far to show that it actually did happen. So there's many reasons that I can say to explain away why these other people would not corroborate the evidence. There's also many reasons I can say that is proof. Why would somebody just make it up on the side? Like, why would somebody say they did something? So, it's just a tough situation. As I said, innocent to proven guilty. That's why we live in these kind of situations. Okay. Anything else I have to say about that? The Kaiser situation? No, that's. I mean, it does come off as pretty questionable that nobody's corroborating this evidence. Okay, so Dr. Ford has not offered a consistent account of the alleged assault. According to a letter to Senator Feinstein, Dr. Ford heard Judge Kavanaugh and Mark Judge talking to other party girls downstairs while she was hiding in the bathroom after the alleged assault. But according to her testimony, she could not hear them talking to anyone. In her letter, she stated, "I locked the door behind me, but both loudly stumbled down the stairwell, at which point other persons at the house were talking with her." She testified that Judge Kavanaugh or Mark Judge turned up the music in the bedroom so that the people downstairs could not hear her scream. She testified that after the incident, she ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and heard them going downstairs. But she maintained that she could not hear their conversation with others when they got downstairs. Instead, she testified that she assumed a conversation took place. So that's bad. That's bad for her case. It's kind of changing the story. Her account of who was at the party has been inconsistent. According to the Washington Post's account of her therapy notes, there were 4 boys in the bedroom in which she was assaulted. She told the Washington Post that the notes were erroneous because there were 4 boys at the. She told the Washington Post that the notes were erroneous because there were 4 boys at the party, but only 2 in the bedroom. In her letter to Senator Feinstein, she said, "Me and 4 others were present at the party." In her testimony, she said there were 4 boys in addition to Leland Kaiser and herself. She could not remember the name of the 4th boy, and no one has come forward. Dr. Ford listed Patrick P.J. Smith as a bystander in her statement to the polygrapher, and in her July 6th text to the Washington Post, although she testified that it was inaccurate to call him a bystander, she did not list Leland Kaiser, even though they are good friends. Leland Kaiser's presence would have been more memorable than P.J. Smith's. So this is just somebody going from experience. If you were calling into question the things she said here, please let me know in the comment section. But this seems to make sense to me. It seems to follow. And again, it's a situation where I will bow to her experience as well. And I've also tried to give some counters to say, okay, why I think this could have happened, just from my general amateur observations of these things. Okay, back to the reading. Dr. Ford has struggled to recall important recent events relating to her allegations, and her testimony regarding recent events raises further questions about her memory. Dr. Ford struggled to remember her interactions with the Washington Post. Dr. Ford could not remember if she showed a full or partial set of therapy notes to the Washington Post reporter. She does not remember whether she followed the Post reporter. She does not remember whether she showed the Post reporter therapist notes or her own summary of these notes. The Washington Post article said the portions of her therapist's notes were provided by Ford and reviewed by the Post, but in her testimony, Dr. Ford could not recall whether she summarized the notes for the reporter or showed her actual records. She does not remember if she actually had a copy of the notes when she texted the Washington Post. When she texted the Washington Post WhatsApp account on July 6th. Now, with something like this, I guess she does not remember, so it doesn't really matter if they can show whether she did or not, because she does not remember. That's what they're calling the question. Okay, back to the reading. Dr. Ford said in her first WhatsApp message to the Post that she had therapy notes talking about the incident, that she, quote, had therapy notes talking about, unquote, the incident when she contacted the Post's tip line. She testified that she had reviewed her therapy notes before contacting the Post to determine whether the mentioned this is odd. Okay, she testified that she reviewed her therapy notes before contacting the Post to determine whether they mentioned anything about the incident. I think there's a typo here. Did they mention anything, or she mentioned anything about the incident, but could not remember if she had a copy of those notes, as she said in her WhatsApp message, or merely reviewed them in her therapist's office. Dr. Ford refused to provide any of her therapy notes to the committee. Dr. Ford's explanation of why she disclosed her allegations the way she did raises questions. She claimed originally that she wished for her story to remain confidential, but the person operating the tip line at the Washington Post was the first person other than her therapist or husband to whom she disclosed the identity of her alleged attacker. She testified that she had a sense of urgency to relay the information to the Senate and the President. She did not contact the Senate, however, because she claims that she did not know how to do that. She does not explain why she knew how to contact her congressman, but not her senator. Dr. Ford could not remember if she was being audio or video recorded when she took the polygraph, and she could not remember whether the polygraph occurred the same day as her grandmother's funeral or the day after her grandmother's funeral. It would also have been inappropriate to administer a polygraph to somebody who was grieving. Excuse me. So, more situations have called into question her allegations and just the process of replying. It seems a lot has been done that is improper. I think if somebody was a professional photographer, they know about the grieving situation. Some of these dates and some of these things, I think they'll be more familiar. But then, I don't know, she could be, again, this is complete speculation. If she is currently grieving, if she is currently going through an issue, going through something, she could be in a situation where she's taking medication that's messing with her memory and things like that. Another issue could be that this was something that she was unsure of. Somebody kind of told her could it have been this. If it's a whole made-up thing, they could have counted on the fact that in a lot of these situations, the mere allegation is enough to get the name taken out, and then when the name gets taken out, then you can go until you could delay the whole proceedings. Because there was this whole time where some of the senators on the Democratic side kept saying, "So glad you're finally coming out to this, need an investigation for this." Yet I'd been seeing reports, and the Republicans actually came out and said this. Like, we tried to have a hearing, we tried to have her come forward, we tried to have an investigation started, yet you guys were holding this back. Even Dr. Ford herself was saying, "I wanted this confidential." So this whole idea that, oh, the Republicans or somebody else was standing aside from preventing this being a hearing and things like that, even if you discount what the Republicans said they were saying by trying to move forward an actual case, Dr. Ford herself said in her testimony that she didn't want this to be out there. So it could have just been Dr. Ford herself that was saying, "I don't want a case." So the Democrats themselves, I think this is going to come up here below, we're saying, "Oh, she's afraid of flying, so that's why we can't have this thing." So this is, and I think people are seeing this. There was a whole walk away movement where Democrats are saying, "Look, I was supporting her and I'm walking away now. I'm going away. I've seen too much." And this is a continuation of that. That could be like a red tsunami. Not even a red tsunami, the red swell is going to continue. This whole situation, because I don't think it's a situation, the red tide is going to continue. Roll tide. It's not roll tide, yeah, that's Alabama football. But anyway, this blue wave is not coming, and people still think it's going to come. It's a sad situation. It's not really sad. Let me not use the word sad for this. But it's an interesting situation watching people think this blue wave is going to come. Okay, I think this is the last point. No, it's 2 more. Back to the reading. Dr. Ford's description of the psychological impact of the event raises question. She maintains that she suffers from anxiety, claustrophobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The date of the hearing was delayed because the committee was informed that her symptoms prevent her from flying, but she agreed during testimony that she flies fairly frequently for her hobbies and work. She flies to the Mid-Atlantic at least once a year to visit her. She flies to the Mid-Atlantic at least once a year to visit her family. She has flown to Hawaii, French Polynesia, and Costa Rica. She also flew to Washington, D.C. for the hearing. And French Polynesia is just in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's tiny island. It's so odd. It's really odd imagining living in that kind of environment and things like that. Very crazy. Okay. Note too that her attorneys refused any private hearing or interview. Dr. Ford testified that she was not clear on whether investigators were willing to travel to California to interview her. It, therefore, is not clear that her attorneys ever communicated Chairman Grassley's offer to send investigators to meet her in California, or whether she wanted to meet, or wherever she wanted to meet to conduct the interview. She alleges that she struggled academically in college, but she has never made any similar claim about her last 2 years of high school. It is significant that she used the word contributed when she described the psychological impact of the incident to the Washington Post. Use of the word contributed rather than caused suggested that other life events may have contributed to her symptoms, and when questioned on that point, said that she could think of nothing as striking as a alleged assault. So, some more on this. So right now, the PTSD, that's a claim that's given a lot for things that I question as being possible to create PTSD. Now, what stresses one person stresses somebody in a different way. As you can see by people mocking Kavanaugh for being in what is a very stressful situation. If he was cold and calm and collected, people would be like, he's cold, calm, and collected, just like a psychopath. Like, yep, there was a comparison. Hillary Clinton made it through 11 years of testimony, 11 hours of testimony, and then having her, that picture of her with her hand on the side of her face, and Judge Kavanaugh 10 minutes in was crying. So what is it? And again, I'm saying that people say women are too emotional to deal with. First of all, Hillary Clinton is not all women, so even though that's what she was running on. I'm a woman. Vote me because I'm a woman. Hillary Clinton was horrible. Still horrible. So you have that kind of situation where people try to compare that, and I'm saying like people accept stress in different situations. Different things happen for different reasons. Now, in different situations, people don't react in different ways, so that to me is just a non-starter. I believe that aside. So she could be suffering from PTSD. Now, this whole situation could have been the start, or it could have been part of a long process of things where it happened. If the assault happened, she could have kind of slowly by slowly degenerated. And once she actually left that environment, she had more of a support system, went off to college, and she actually got attached to other things, and then all of a sudden, all these things come down, and maybe that's what's affecting her life. And she's still been relatively successful. I think she's a professor at, I forget what school, but she's been relatively successful despite that. So, I mean, good for her if this assault happened and she actually has overcome these things. But that's also good proof to show that, yes, people do get assaulted, but you can overcome these things. Again, if the assault happened. But regardless, I do think they could have been situations like it's kind of odd to say it's contributed and then the cause and those kind of things. And this is calling into question. I agree, this makes things kind of questionable. So I think the last point here, the activities of congressional Democrats and Dr. Ford attorneys likely affected Dr. Ford's trial. See the included timeline for details. So now, I think I might just kind of skim this timeline. Well, let me just read it. We're here anyway. You're still with me. Thanks a lot for this. We're approaching an hour, so I'm going to try to nip this in the bud soon. But here we go. So July 6th, the event, it goes date, event, description, citations. I'm not going to read the citations. It's kind of pointless to kind of read, I think, here. There's going to be links below to a blog post with this and maybe some of the memes and other information that I find pertinent. I'm going to be putting in there. I might update it over the next couple of days, just to add different things. And if there's more interesting information with this whole case, like I said, in this 1 week period of actually doing the investigation, the FBI is going to investigate into this. So I think I'll have that. This is a topic I'm probably going to talk about again or refer to, and I'll have this post probably be the main post I refer back to with this. So anyway, so date, July 6th, event. Ford speaks with with representative SU staff. Ford called SU's office and requested a meeting. A staffer spoke with Ford in advance of the meeting. In her letter to Senator Feinstein, Ford wrote, on July 6th, I notified my local government representative to ask him how to proceed. Second event. Ford texts the Washington Post tip line using WhatsApp. WhatsApp. WhatsApp or WhatsApp? How do you guys say that? Do you say WhatsApp or WhatsApp? WhatsApp. 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 Anyway, identifies Brett Kavanaugh with Mark Judd as her attacker and says that PJ was a bystander. She says she shouldn't be quiet about her allegations. Excuse me. July 9th, Ford speaks with Escher's staff on the phone. July 10th, Ford contacts the Washington Post again. We advised to contact senators or New York Times. Haven't heard back from Washington Post. Date. At some point between July 10th and September 16th, Ford speaks with Emma Brown, a Washington Post reporter. Brown was the reporter who ultimately responded to the WhatsApp entries. July 18th, Ford meets with Eshu's staff. July 20th, Ford speaks with Eshu. Ford and Eshu met for more than an hour and a half in a conference room. Eshu suggested that she write a letter detailing her claims to Senator Feinstein. July 30th. The letter dated July 30th is delivered to Senator Feinstein's DC office. Eshu said she hasn't met with the professor since that July afternoon, although her staff has been in contact with her since she came forward. Most of the citations are hearing testimonies or produced documents. I see committee records. So most of it is a hearing testimony and committee records. So, and they said you have to list this so you can check it out on your own if you'd like. July 31st, Senator Feinstein writes a letter to Ford. The letter promises not to share Ford's letter without her explicit consent. Ford did not provide this letter to the committee. Between July 30th and August 7th, Ford speaks by phone with Senator Feinstein. Between July 30th and August 7th, Ford speaks with Senator Feinstein's staff, who recommends that she engage Deborah Katz. Between July 30th and August 7th, Ford engages Deborah Katz to represent her with regard to her allegations. Okay, there was a typo below, and I think with this one, since all of them are between July 30th and 7th, I don't know why it's just all one section for the date being one. This is just like a formatting thing. I do graphic design and things like that, and some of these small things just kind of bug me. So anyway, it's been put together fast. It's been put together by somebody who was aiding her. So I don't know. Anyway, here we go. Back to the video. August 7th, Ford takes a polygraph test after she engages Katz. Ford took a polygraph test administered by a former FBI agent. Katz provided the results to the Washington Post. They showed that she was being truthful when she said a statement summarizing her allegations was accurate. You see right here, she's saying the statement summarizing. But then with that statement as well, I don't know if they're going to show this below, but I heard this, that some things were crossed out and checked out because she wrote this down. Now, we don't know if she wrote the statement and then it had different things in it, and then she was asked if that was accurate, and then she said yes, and then she went back and crossed out some things, edited some things, now, like, that's what was presented. So maybe what was in the original thing when she was being asked is not the same. So these are questions being brought up that could be easily been dealt with by just having more transparency, more openness about these, releasing more information. That's why it's like you've talked about actual things. People have made statements about things known unknowns. So let's try to find out the truth, the facts. Let's try to find out the truth about the known unknowns. Because there's known unknowns, there's unknown knowns, where it's like, okay, I know I don't know these things. Okay, known unknowns, the things that you know you don't know. Unknown knowns. Is it unknown knowns of things? I'm going to try to look into what those things are, but I think there's like a three things: known unknowns, unknown knowns. Unknown knowns are the things you don't know that you know, or things you don't know that you know can be known. I think that's a kind of thing. But then a known unknown is something that you know that is not known. You don't know that can be known. That's kind of the same thing, right? And then there's unknown unknowns, where it's like, okay, I don't know that this isn't even a thing that you could possibly know. So I completely butchered that whole explanation thing. But I think in this situation, we're specifically talking about known unknowns. You're saying, I have this document that you refer to a document, and the people who are there don't know what's in that document. They say, can we see that document? You refer to actual recordings with the therapist, and you say, I'm not going to disclose what's in them, but can I see that? Just like with the Keith Ellison situation, she referred to actual 911 calls or some kind of evidence, some kind of video recording evidence of the assault happening, and she's like, I can't release it. So it's like, if you want us to believe you, can we have this information? And then if you don't, the Democratic Party is going to say, you haven't provided any evidence to Keith Ellison, is still going to get the nominee for the Attorney General, I think, of Minnesota, and he might be on the presidential ticket or for higher office, and he's going to maintain his position as deputy chair of the Democratic National Convention or National Congress or whatever it's called. So yeah, there we go. So August 20th, Senator Feinstein meets with one-on-one with Kavanaugh. August 28th, Senator Feinstein's staff participates in the first background investigation, B1 call. Is it B1 or BI? I think it's BI. Senator Feinstein's staff asks Judge Kavanaugh numerous questions about the confidential background information. Yeah. And this is one of the things. Like, they get information and they ask you about the information knowing they have this information to see if you're going to. This is kind of an entrapment situation. I do understand this is the process that goes through. I find it kind of, like, yeah, we've actually talked to this person, but we're going to, like, tell you, we're going to lie to you, or at least not disclose enough information to you. It's tough. But I think if you're trying to uncover a crime, somebody really committed something, then yeah. But then this technique is also used to railroad somebody who's want to catch you lying about something that for some other reason. Like, oh, you lied to us. Not that you did what was actually you've been accused of, but you lying to them, depending on who they are, especially when it's like the FBI, that's actually considered a crime. And that is also why some of these people make these allegations in public, in social media, in the social sphere. They don't actually go and file a police report. Because if you file a police report and it's found to have been false, you're wasting the money and the time of the police, and that also takes away from actual crimes being committed, people actually being victimized, and there's a higher chance of you actually being held accountable for those lies if you actually file a police report. So, anyway, back to this. August 31st. Senator Feinstein writes Dr. Ford a letter. Senator Feinstein's promised that she would not share Dr. Ford's July 30th letter without Dr. Ford's explicit consent. September 4th to 7th. The Senate Justice Committee, simply SJC from here forward, holds a public hearing on Kavanaugh's nomination. September 6th. SJC gives senators an opportunity to question Kavanaugh about sensitive issues at closed session. Senator Feinstein does not attend closed session. September 12th. The Intercept reports that SJC Democrats have requested to view a Kavanaugh-related document in possession of Senator Feinstein. September 12th. The article reported that a letter in the possession of Senator Feinstein reportedly described an incident that was relayed to someone affiliated with Stanford University, who authored the letter and sent it to Rep. Anna Eshoo, a Democrat who represents the area. Excuse me. September 12th. Ford's attorney, Deborah Katz, is seen leaving Capitol Hill shortly after the Intercept story was published. September 13th. Senator Feinstein refers the letter to the FBI. Which is one thing here with the attorney. They're talking about some connections with the attorneys to Senator Feinstein's office, which may show some impropriety with the situation, but there's very few people at the highest levels of the profession that handle this kind of thing when going to the actual Supreme Court and dealing with something at this high level. It is kind of a boys and girls club, where it is a 1% in all situations. Every single field has a 1%. Like, when someone's like, oh, like, looking watching the sports team, now LeBron James is with the Lakers. Like, oh, was that the same LeBron James that played for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the same one that played for Miami? Yes, because there's like a select handful of people in the world who are capable and called upon to do certain things. And when you're talking about a court case at this level, you are going to get to a situation where, yes, they are going to know somebody in DC. So for me, that's not really a bother too much that they are involved. I mean, there could be impropriety going on in there, but whatever. And also earlier on, I know some people will say she's a registered Democrat, I mean, she's a registered Republican. So of course she's going to support them. Of course she's biased. But these are the same people that were probably saying with Mueller, Mueller is a registered Republican, I think. But with somebody like Comey or with Peter Zork, who was actually there before, they just talked about how other officials were investigating the fact that most of the Russia investigation committee or group that's investigating the apparent collusion between Donald Trump and Russia are Democrats, registered Democrats, a high amount of Democrats in the FBI and things like this, saying that's not going to affect how they actually do their job. And I personally think it is possible to divide that, I don't think it's as high as the level that other people do, but that's why you need actual evidence. If somebody's just like, look, this is my personal beliefs, I'll vote this way, but that's why you need to rely as much as possible on the rule of law, on the process, on the actual evidence, take up the emotions out of this, and then you can actually get to, I think, the most just results. But then now there's something also there with like justice-based morality versus ethics-based morality. And they say some people, mostly females, are probably about 60-40 females, lean towards ethics-based or more emotional thinking, emotional feeling, things like that. And then 60-40, of course, like we left the flip side over, would be towards justice-based, where males in general, or some people with certain mindset, are more towards just the facts and their emotions. And there's going to be another reading I'll do on a separate post, a separate video. A great conversation I had that goes deeper into this kind of concept. But if you've been listening to my channel, you probably are familiar with this material. Okay, September 14th. September 14th, September 13th, Senator Feinstein refers the letter to the FBI. September 14th, the New Yorker reports on an interview with Ford, but does not identify her name. The article described the incident in detail. September 16th, the Washington Post reports on an interview with Dr. Ford. The article describes the incident in detail. September 17th, SGC has a follow-up FBI call with Kavanaugh on the Ford letter. Senator Feinstein does not participate. Senator Feinstein's staff did not show up. September 25th, SJC speaks with Kavanaugh about the allegation against him. Senator Feinstein's staff declared that they were present on the protest and did not participate. September 26th, SJC speaks with Judge Kavanaugh about the allegations against him. Senator Feinstein's staff declared that they were present on the protest and did not participate. So yeah, that's it. That's the article. You guys, as I mentioned, are more than welcome to check this out in the comment section below. There's going to be an ability for you guys to do that if you want to check it out yourself. I highly suggest you do, because it's important information. If you're going to be discussing this topic and want to have some kind of educated idea of what's going on, and I think it's important. As I mentioned, I think this is a key thing. We're going to see who actually cares about that whole presumption of innocence, who actually cares about evidence, who just thinking like, no, we can just damn people. And you have this situation. One of the really annoying things that people say when they do this is an assault charge comes out, and then somebody says, imagine if it was your mother or your sister or your wife. But you hardly ever hear the flip side. Imagine if it was your husband or your brother or your son that was actually under this false allegation. And you see some lines here where it's like, women in general may be more left and more understanding of this. Then you get married and have kids, and they say they become more conservative. And that's what I wonder with these people. Both people on both sides of the spectrum, the tails of the spectrum, as we mentioned in this other conversation we had, where it's like the people who just seem to really hate men, kill all men, this kind of things. And you know, the other people who are like, women are cancerous, avoid marriage at all costs, can't deal with women, cut them out of your life. Like, who are you surrounded with? What kind of people are around your life? Where are your parents? Where is your mother and father? Where are your brothers and sisters? Where are your friends? Do you not have people who have disproved these horrible generalizations of how people behave? I'm like, I've known too many women, who, for me to think all women are worthless, all women are pointless. And there's also a straw man that's brought up when you bring up these questions. Are you questioning a woman? Are you saying all women lie? I'm like, no, I'm saying all humans have the capability of lying, and I'm saying women are a class of humans, so it is possible for that class of humans to have that quality that humans have of the ability to lie for things. Humans have the ability to be right or wrong about something, even if they have no intention to lie. They're flawed. These things happen. So that's why I'm like, I'm going to hold to that higher state of evidence where I'm like, no, I'm not just going to take somebody on their word on something this big. If I am sitting in my room and for some reason I have no windows or whatnot, and somebody's like, hey, yeah, it's going to rain tonight, and I don't feel like checking my phone, checking the weather, I'll carry like a small umbrella. Doesn't mean that person is going to be right, but like, I can take that person's word. It's like, okay, I carry the umbrella. If it doesn't rain, I don't have an umbrella. I just don't have a raincoat. I mean, I have it with me. I don't have to use it. But something this big, somebody's like, hey, yeah, you should put like, give me $10,000. I'm going to put it on this and give it right back to you. I'm probably going to need a higher level of like evidence to make I'm going to risk that $10,000. So that's just what I'm saying in this kind of situation. It's tough. It's a it's a tough situation. The information is out there. I think if this interests you and you feel like, hey, I can actually go out and I want this to be a hill that I actually fight on, and I highly suggest more people become more politically active. These are very important things. I think a lot is at stake for this. At the same point, I do say the world is safer and better than it's ever been in known history. It could be stuff that happened before the Younger Dryas effect. Another video coming up in that soon, like that prehistorical civilizations and things like that. But for what we know of, this is the best time to be alive in the world that we ever had. If you are listening to this, you are probably living a quality of life better than 99.9% of the people that we have known of in the world. So, what we have to lose is also more than we've ever had at stake. So I highly suggest topics like this. If you're going to be out there and talking to people about this, be as informed as possible. It is also completely okay to say, I do not know. And for anyone who's stating that they know for a fact that Judge Kavanaugh is guilty of what he was accused of doing as a 15-year-old boy in the DC area, like 30 years, something years ago, sometime in the 80s, maybe to late early 80s, then I don't know what kind of thing you're basing this on, what evidence are you basing that on. And lack of evidence does not mean absence. Like, just because I don't see the moon right now because it's clouds outside doesn't mean the moon doesn't exist. But if there was somebody who's never seen the moon and I told them, yeah, there's this huge globe out there that occasionally reflects the sunlight back to the earth. And there's a random, a random thing related to this. There was this joke, this meme where it was like a vampire is at night is kind of holding up this man, and this man is like, the moon doesn't actually create its own light; it just reflects the sunlight back at us. And then the vampire kind of pauses and dissolves. Because I have that whole thing where like, the vampire actually is in some vampire lore, it dies by sunlight, and yeah, that was just kind of a funny thing. Like science saves. But science says, and what is science? Science is information. Science is testing things. Science is saying, look, we believe this is going to happen. Let's test it, and let's have this repeatable thing. And then now we know this as a fact. We know this as information that we can build other things on. And civilization itself is also built, I think, on that scientific basis. You have a hypothesis, and it becomes a theory, it becomes a fact, it becomes something true and known once you actually test it through these things. And I think we should hold that as a very valuable thing that we do in society. So I think that's it for this video. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment section, let me know what you guys think about this. Have you been following this? Do you think I'm just being ridiculous? This is not worth anything? Do you think this is as big of an issue as I thought it was? I think like this is something that people should really pay attention to. This could have a lot of ramifications in the world coming forward about just politics in the United States of America and the world in general. Because America is still the leader in a lot of things, and the way the United States goes, a lot of other places follow. And I've seen already seen things like Me Too being brought up here in the United States, and here in Kenya. There's definitely a knock-on effect of some of these things, and some positives, some negatives, as the world goes. But yeah, that's it for now. Like, share, and subscribe. Links below to the merchandise store. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Goodbye.